He thought it was just another quiet evening by the creek, until he saw her. A figure unlike anything he had ever known, moving with a grace that seemed almost unreal. At first, he couldn't believe his eyes, an alien beauty, bathing in the water behind his home. Her face that stopped him cold. There was something familiar, something haunting, something that made him question everything he thought he knew about life, the universe, and himself. And in that moment, nothing would ever be the same again. It had been a quiet evening in the small town of Meadowridge, the kind of evening where the air hangs heavy with the scent of wet earth and the distant hum of crickets blends into a lullaby for the restless mind. For Jonah Harker, it was supposed to be just another ordinary night. He had spent the day fixing the old wooden fence behind his modest home, the one bordering the creek that snaked lazily through the forest that framed his property. The sun had dipped low on the horizon, streaking the sky with hues of amber and violet, and the shadows of the trees began to stretch like long fingers across the grass. Jonah wiped the sweat from his brow, setting his tools down with a tired sigh, and he felt a familiar satisfaction, a kind that only comes after honest, physical work. But he had no idea that this evening would shatter the quiet rhythm of his life and pull him into a world he had never imagined existed. He wandered toward the edge of the creek, the soft gurgle of water over smooth stones welcoming him like an old friend. He loved this time of day. The creek was his sanctuary, a place where he could think, breathe, and let the solitude wash over him. It was here, hidden from the view of the road and the sparse neighboring houses, that he felt most at peace. He paused, squinting against the last rays of sunlight, and that's when he saw her. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, a reflection in the water. She was crouched near the bank, the soft ripples of the creek wrapping around her form. Her hair shimmered in the fading light, not like any human hair he had ever seen, but like strands of liquid silver that caught the sun and scattered it in every direction. Jonah froze, a chill running down his spine. His mind raced, struggling to make sense of the impossible scene before him. He had always considered himself a rational man, grounded in reality, yet here was something that defied everything he knew. He stepped closer, careful to avoid making a sound. The grass was wet beneath his boots, but he hardly noticed. His heart pounded in his chest as he took in her figure. Her skin was smooth and pale, almost luminescent in the dim light, and there was an ethereal quality to her movements, a fluidity that no human could naturally possess. But it wasn't just her appearance that left him stunned. It was the undeniable aura of otherworldliness that seemed to radiate from her. Every instinct in Jonah screamed at him to run, yet his feet moved forward as if drawn by some invisible force. He ducked behind a cluster of bushes at the water's edge, barely daring to breathe. And then she looked up. Her eyes, large, deep, and impossibly vibrant, met his. It was a gaze that seemed to pierce not just the flesh but the very soul, revealing fragments of thoughts and emotions Jonah didn't even know he possessed. He stumbled back a step, nearly losing his balance, the sensation of being seen in such a profound way overwhelming. Her face, so beautiful and alien at once, was unlike anything he had ever encountered. There was a symmetry and harmony to her features that was disarming, yet there was something else, something that made his stomach twist with a mixture of fear and fascination. Jonah's mind screamed for an explanation, some rational answer, but no words came. She smiled faintly, not a human smile, not even a fully understandable one, but a gesture that carried warmth and intelligence in equal measure. The sound of the creek, the rustling leaves, even the soft hum of the evening air seemed to fade into the background as Jonah struggled to comprehend the sight before him. Every nerve in his body was alive, every sense heightened to a painful degree. It was a moment suspended in time, a moment that felt both impossibly long and fleeting, as if the universe itself had paused to witness their encounter. And then, as if sensing his hesitation, she stood. The water cascaded off her form in silvery droplets, each one catching the fading sunlight like a tiny star. She moved with deliberate grace, her every step both fluid and purposeful. Jonah's heart raced. He wanted to speak, to call out, to demand answers, yet no sound emerged. His tongue felt heavy, as though the very air had conspired to keep him silent. And then she did something that made his pulse nearly stop. She tilted her head slightly, and her face, already impossible in its beauty, shifted, subtle yet undeniable. It was as if the contours of her features had changed just enough to reveal something deeper, something more human beneath the alien surface. Jonah's mind reeled. He felt a jolt of recognition, a strange sense of familiarity that should have been impossible. He couldn't understand it, Yet he knew that whatever this creature was, it had just altered the course of his life forever. Every rational thought fled, replaced by an unshakable curiosity. He wanted to know who, or what, she was, why she was here, and how such a being could exist in a quiet creek behind his home. The creek, once a place of solitude and routine, had transformed into the epicenter of something vast and unknowable. Jonah took another step forward, despite the fear gnawing at him. The grass underfoot was slick with dew, but he barely noticed. Every instinct screamed caution, yet some deeper part of him urged him onward. And then she spoke. Her voice was soft, melodic, and unlike any human voice he had ever heard. The words were incomprehensible at first, a series of tones and pitches that seemed to resonate directly within his mind rather than through his ears. Jonah staggered slightly, unsure if he had actually heard her, or if his imagination was unraveling under the weight of what he was witnessing. She repeated the sound, slower this time, and he began to discern patterns, fragments of meaning. It wasn't language as he knew it, yet somehow it was communicative. Somehow, he understood that she was aware of him, aware of his presence, and perhaps even curious. His pulse raced, a mixture of terror and exhilaration coiling in his chest. He had always been fascinated by the unknown, but never in his wildest dreams had he imagined that the unknown would manifest in this way, in the form of a living, breathing, impossibly beautiful being, standing naked in the creek behind his house, watching him as intently as he watched her. And then the first sounds of movement from the forest behind him caught his attention, branches snapping, leaves rustling, and Jonah realized he was not alone in his awe. The world around him, once quiet and predictable, now seemed layered with possibilities he had never considered. Something ancient and enigmatic had stepped into his life, and he had been chosen, for reasons he could not yet fathom, to witness it. The alien beauty in the creek looked at him again, her face shifting ever so slightly, and in that instant, Jonah felt as if the entire universe had condensed into that single expression. There was warning in it, yes, but there was also invitation, a promise of revelations that could alter the very foundations of his understanding. He wanted to run, but his body betrayed him. He wanted to speak, but no words would come. All he could do was stand there, mesmerized, trying to reconcile the impossible reality before him with the mundane, orderly life he had always known. And then she stepped deeper into the creek, the water rising to her waist, and with a fluid, deliberate motion, she extended a hand, not toward him directly, but in a gesture that seemed to bridge the gap between worlds. Jonah's breath caught. Could he trust this being? Could he step forward into the unknown, knowing that every decision from this moment onward would carry consequences beyond his comprehension? The thought was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. For a moment, the mundane world, the fences, the tools, the grass, the sky, faded entirely, leaving only Jonah, the creek, and the alien who had appeared from nowhere, whose face had just changed the way he saw everything. He realized then that nothing in his life would ever be the same. The world behind him, familiar and safe, now seemed distant and irrelevant. And as the light dimmed further, casting long, wavering shadows across the water, Jonah took a hesitant step closer, his mind racing with questions, his heart heavy with anticipation, and a strange, undeniable certainty that this encounter was only the beginning of something far greater, far stranger, and far more extraordinary than he could possibly imagine. Jonah stood frozen at the edge of the creek, his senses still reeling from the impossible sight. The alien, if that's what she truly was, remained waist-deep in the water, her silver hair catching the last vestiges of sunlight and scattering it in dazzling shards across the surface. Her face, both impossibly beautiful and otherworldly, had etched itself into his mind, each feature burning with a clarity that made him question the very fabric of reality. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The creek whispered around them, a delicate symphony of water over stone, broken only by the distant rustle of leaves in the approaching night. Jonah's heart raced so violently he feared it might betray him, yet some inner compulsion rooted him to the spot. Curiosity warred with caution, fascination with fear. He had never felt such a collision of emotion. He wanted answers, yet he feared the answers might shatter his understanding of life entirely. And then she spoke again. Not with words, at least not as Jonah knew them. It was more a vibration, a melodic resonance that seemed to bypass his ears entirely and thrum directly against his chest, like the hum of some invisible instrument tuned to the very frequency of thought. He staggered slightly, catching himself against a nearby tree, trying to process the sensation. His mind raced, attempting to parse meaning from tone, pitch, and cadence, a desperate attempt to impose human logic on something far beyond it. And then for the first time he felt comprehension, not through intellect but through a deeper, instinctive understanding. She was aware of him. Not in the casual sense humans often perceived attention, but aware in a profound, absolute way. Jonah's pulse quickened as he realized he was the object of her focus, the center of her curiosity. He wanted to speak, to call out a greeting, but the words felt alien in his mouth, inadequate to the moment. Yet he tried anyway. I'm Jonah, he stammered, the name feeling absurdly insufficient. She tilted her head again, and the faintest curve of a smile appeared on her lips. Her face shifted subtly once more, and in that small alteration, Jonah felt an entire spectrum of emotion. Curiosity, amusement, and something almost like recognition. He stumbled back a step, nearly losing his footing in the slick grass. The alien's gaze held him in place, anchoring him to the spot, and Jonah realized that every instinct that had screamed for retreat was being overridden by a compulsion to remain, to witness, to understand. He took another, cautious step forward. I don't mean to intrude, he said, his voice shaky but growing steadier. He paused, struggling to articulate the impossible thoughts swirling in his mind. The alien raised one delicate hand, partially submerged in the cool water, and gestured toward him, not insistently but invitingly. It was a motion that seemed to promise safety, or perhaps a fragile truce. Jonah's breath caught in his throat. Every rational thought screamed retreat, yet he couldn't resist. He stepped closer, each footfall deliberate, aware that he was crossing a boundary he would never forget. The air around the creek seemed to shift subtly, a faint electric hum that raised goosebumps along his arms. It was as if the universe itself had bent slightly toward this encounter, holding its breath. When he reached the edge of the water, he stopped again. The alien's eyes, brilliant, multifaceted, almost like liquid gemstones, studied him with a depth that made his skin tingle. And then slowly, almost imperceptibly, her face changed once more. It was subtle, a rearrangement of features so slight that a casual observer would never notice, yet Jonah felt it in his bones. There was a softness now, a vulnerability layered beneath the alien perfection. He realized with a jolt that she was not just a creature of another world. She was aware, conscious, and perhaps lonely. The thought struck him like a physical blow. Loneliness. Here, in a creek behind his home, in a quiet town far removed from cosmic grandeur, this being was alone. Jonah's heart clenched. He wanted to ask her everything, where she came from, why she was here, what she was, but the words would not form. Instead, he did the only thing he could think of. He sat down at the water's edge, careful not to make a sound, and simply watched. Time seemed to slow. The sun had dipped below the horizon entirely now, leaving only the soft glow of twilight, and the creek reflected the darkening sky like a sheet of obsidian. The alien moved gracefully in the water, lifting her hands, allowing the droplets to cascade like liquid silver. Jonah's fascination grew, but he was also acutely aware of the danger. Though what danger, he could not say. She could be benevolent or hostile, or something entirely beyond human comprehension. And yet, there was a strange calmness in her presence, an unspoken promise that harm was not her intention. Minutes passed. Jonah felt a strange kinship growing, as if the simple act of witnessing her existence formed a bond neither of them fully understood. He finally found his voice again, softer this time, almost a whisper. You're not from here, are you? The alien's head tilted slightly, and the subtle change in her face seemed to acknowledge the question. Jonah felt the answer resonate within him, not as words, but as a sensation, a confirmation that she was indeed not of his world. It was a truth so monumental, so fundamentally impossible, that it should have shattered his mind entirely. Yet somehow, it felt like a revelation he had been waiting for all his life. Encouraged by the lack of threat, Jonah spoke again, his voice more confident this time. Why are you here? Are you lost? The alien remained silent, but her gaze softened. The shift in expression was slight, a hint of something human, something almost tender. Jonah realized she was considering him, evaluating whether she could trust him, whether she could allow this human into her presence. The air between them grew heavier with meaning, unspoken and impossible to decipher. Jonah shifted slightly, drawing a deep breath. He had never felt such raw, unfiltered emotion in the presence of another being, human or otherwise. And yet, there it was, emanating from her in waves. Curiosity, caution, and something deeper, almost a longing. He extended his hand tentatively, unsure if the gesture would be understood or misinterpreted. The alien watched, unblinking, and then, slowly, deliberately, she mirrored the gesture, her fingers slicing through the water with perfect precision, stopping just short of his. Jonah's heart surged. The simplest act of mirrored movement felt like a bridge across worlds. It was connection. It was acknowledgement. And then, as if compelled by some instinct neither fully understood, Jonah spoke again, this time less hesitantly. I don't know what you are, or where you come from, but I want to understand. I want to help. The alien's face changed, and for the first time, Jonah caught what he could only describe as a flicker of emotion akin to relief. The water around her rippled with the motion of her subtle movements, and in that ripple, Jonah saw something more, a reflection not just of her form, but of possibility, of the uncharted path that now lay before him. They stayed like that for what felt like hours, Jonah at the edge of the creek, her in the water, communicating in silence and subtle gestures, bridging an unfathomable gap with nothing but presence and attention. He felt a strange exhilaration in the realization that the world he had always taken for granted, the mundane routines, the quiet predictability, had just become infinitely larger, infinitely stranger. And then, just as he was beginning to lose himself in the moment, the forest behind him stirred again. There were sounds of movement, something or someone approaching. Jonah's pulse quickened. He glanced back, straining to see through the gathering darkness. The alien's gaze followed his, sharp and alert now, every muscle in her body taut. Whatever was coming, she recognized it instantly, and in that recognition, Jonah felt a flash of fear. She moved with sudden grace, stepping closer to the bank, her silver hair catching what little light remained. Jonah realized, with a sickening jolt, that whatever this entity was, it was capable of incredible speed and strength, yet she had chosen to stand openly in the creek rather than flee. She was waiting for him, or perhaps for whoever approached, to decide the next move. Jonah felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He could turn and run, hide, or leave her to whatever fate might arrive, but something inside him refused. He stepped closer, his hand hovering near hers, and found courage he didn't know he possessed. He would face whatever came, together. The first rustle of branches gave way to a low, guttural sound, unfamiliar to human ears, and Jonah felt his stomach twist with fear. But he also felt something else, an odd, thrilling certainty that this encounter was the beginning of a story far larger than himself, a story that would challenge everything he thought he knew about life, about the universe, and about the fragile boundary between wonder and terror. And as the alien's eyes met his again, glowing faintly in the twilight, Jonah knew that whatever happened next, his life had changed forever. There was no turning back. The rustling from the trees grew louder, and Jonah's heart pounded in rhythm with the invisible threat that approached from the darkness. Shadows shifted in unnatural ways, as though the forest itself was bending to accommodate the arrival of something that did not belong. The alien, the being whose face had already changed Jonah's understanding of reality, stood in the creek, her form partially illuminated by the last streaks of twilight. Her eyes, multifaceted and reflective, glimmered with both caution and an uncanny intelligence. She had sensed the approach long before Jonah had, and in that anticipation, there was a grace, a precision, a readiness that both terrified and fascinated him. Jonah's hand hovered near hers, uncertain whether his presence would help or hinder her, whether he should step forward or retreat. But the pull he felt toward her was stronger than fear, a magnetic force that seemed to tether him to the very spot. Whatever was coming, he wanted to face it with her. A low, rumbling growl echoed through the clearing. Jonah swallowed hard, forcing his voice past the lump in his throat. "Who's there?" His words seemed absurdly human in the face of what he was sensing, yet he could not help himself. The alien's head tilted slightly, a subtle motion, almost imperceptible, but it carried meaning. She was assessing, calculating, measuring the threat, or perhaps simply acknowledging it. Her gaze returned to him briefly, and in that fraction of a second, Jonah felt a strange, intimate connection, as though she was silently reassuring him. "I am here. Do not fear." Then the sound came again, closer, sharper, a series of clicks and thuds that did not resemble any animal Jonah had ever heard. The forest vibrated with it, the very air humming with an unnatural frequency. Jonah's pulse quickened. His mind raced through every possibility, every rational explanation, but none sufficed. Nothing in human experience could account for the sound, nor the weight of dread that accompanied it. The alien stepped forward slightly, water rippling around her like liquid silver. She raised her hand again, not in defense, but in a motion that seemed to draw the energy around her closer, bending it, shaping it, as if she were in tune with forces invisible to Jonah's eyes. He gasped softly. The energy, or whatever it was, manifested as a faint shimmer in the air, like heat rising off asphalt, but with a subtle iridescence. Jonah could feel it against his skin, an almost tangible vibration that resonated in his chest. He realized then that she was not just aware of him, or the approaching presence, but actively interacting with the environment on a level he could barely comprehend. And then, as though responding to some unspoken command, the presence in the forest revealed itself. A shape moved through the trees, distorted and fluid, a creature both familiar and alien. It was massive, far larger than any human, with limbs that bent at impossible angles and eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. Its skin shimmered like dark mercury, reflecting fragments of the fading sun. Jonah's instinct screamed to run, to flee from this being, but his legs refused to obey. He was rooted by a mixture of fear and awe. The alien's face shifted subtly, and Jonah realized that she was communicating without words again. The changes in her expression were slight, almost imperceptible, but they carried layers of meaning. They were commands, reassurances, and warnings all at once. She was telling him to stay calm, to trust her, to observe. The creature stepped closer, each motion fluid and deliberate. Its gaze fell upon Jonah first, and then upon the alien. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. Then, in a movement so fast Jonah barely processed it, the alien raised both hands, palms outward. A pulse of light, or energy, emanated from her, rippling through the air, striking the creature squarely in the chest. Jonah's ears rang with a harmonic resonance, a sound that felt both excruciating and exhilarating. The creature recoiled, stumbling backward, but it did not retreat. Instead, it seemed to study her, to consider her, as though recognizing a force of equal or greater power. Jonah's mind reeled. This being was not merely alien, she was extraordinary, in ways he could not even begin to quantify. And yet, there was no malice in her actions. She was defending, but not attacking. She was asserting presence, but not domination. Jonah took a careful step closer, compelled by a mix of fear and fascination. The alien's gaze flicked toward him briefly, and he felt a silent command to remain vigilant, but not to interfere. The creature shifted again, its form rippling and changing as if it were not fully solid. Jonah noticed that its eyes reflected a deep intelligence, a consciousness that rivaled the alien standing before him. And then in a voice, or rather a resonance, that pierced the air and reverberated in his chest, it spoke. Jonah couldn't understand the words, not in any human sense, but the meaning was clear. A threat, a warning, a demand. The alien's face shifted again, subtly, imperceptibly, but Jonah felt the emotion, calm, control, negotiation. She did not fear the creature. She understood it. She was communicating, not verbally, but through the vibrations in the air, the subtle shifts in energy, and the silent language of presence. Jonah was captivated, struggling to comprehend the invisible dialogue unfolding before him. Minutes, or perhaps hours, passed in what felt like seconds. The creature tested her, circling, probing, challenging, and each time, she responded with measured movements, subtle shifts in energy, and changes in expression. Jonah felt the weight of the encounter in his bones. He realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. Not a battle, but a negotiation between entities beyond human comprehension. And then abruptly the creature paused. It tilted its massive head, considering, and then slowly retreated into the shadows of the forest. Jonah exhaled a shaky breath, his body trembling with adrenaline. The alien lowered her hands, the shimmering energy fading from the air. She turned to him, her face once again shifting subtly, conveying relief, reassurance, and something like gratitude. Jonah's mind struggled to process it all. She had faced a being far beyond his understanding and emerged unscathed, her presence alone commanding respect and caution. He finally found his voice, though it was barely more than a whisper. You were amazing. The alien's head tilted, listening, and then she touched the water lightly, sending a ripple toward him. Jonah felt the sensation in his chest, a warmth, a confirmation that she understood his words, even if she did not respond in kind. I don't even know what you are, he said, shaking his head. But I want to learn. Please teach me. Her face changed again, and Jonah felt an emotion he recognized this time. Trust. She was inviting him cautiously into her world. A world beyond comprehension, beyond the boundaries of human experience, yet intimately connected through these small, silent exchanges. He realized then that this encounter was only the beginning. Whatever she was, whatever this world represented, It had chosen him in some way. And in that selection, Jonah felt both terrified and honored. He wanted answers, but he understood that the answers would not come easily, and perhaps never in the way he expected. They would come in moments, in gestures, in subtle shifts of presence and awareness. Jonah took another careful step forward, closer to the water, closer to her, feeling the magnetic pull of something extraordinary. The alien regarded him, her face softening again, a signal that the bridge between their worlds was beginning to form. And in that moment, Jonah knew that his life had irrevocably changed. There would be no returning to the ordinary, no retreat into mundane routines. He had glimpsed the extraordinary, felt it resonate within him, and now it was part of him. The night deepened around the creek, but the alien remained, a beacon of impossible beauty and intelligence, and Jonah stayed, rooted by awe and curiosity. Whatever came next, he would face it, not as a solitary human, but as a witness and participant in something that transcended everything he had ever known. And as the first stars began to pierce the twilight sky, Jonah felt a quiet certainty settle in his chest. His journey had only just begun. He could not yet understand her origins, her purpose, or the full extent of her abilities, but he knew one thing with absolute clarity. His world, and everything he thought he understood about it, had expanded infinitely in that single, breathtaking encounter. The forest settled into an eerie calm, the earlier encounter lingering like a charged current in the air. Jonah stood by the creek, every nerve on edge, his eyes fixed on the alien. She moved with an elegance that defied human understanding, her skin catching the dim moonlight and reflecting it like liquid crystal. The creek's surface shimmered with every step she took, ripples curling outward, as though the water itself recognized her presence. Jonah wanted to speak, to ask the questions that burned inside him, but words felt inadequate, too small for what he had witnessed. He instead chose silence, letting the tension and wonder wash over him. After what felt like hours, though in reality might have been mere minutes, she finally broke the silence. Her voice was soft, almost musical, resonating directly inside Jonah's mind rather than through the air. The sensation startled him at first, but it was not unpleasant. It was intimate, unintrusive, and filled with layers of meaning. "Do not fear," she communicated. "You are safe. But the night is not." Jonah swallowed hard, his pulse still racing. What are you?" he whispered aloud, uncertain if the question was even necessary. She tilted her head, considering, and then a soft pulse of light emitted from her chest. The patterns shimmered in intricate designs, almost like a language, and Jonah felt the message echo inside his mind. "I am of the Vayari. I am not here to harm you, but the forest is dangerous to those who do not understand it." Jonah's mind reeled. "Vayari," he managed. "What are you saying?" She stepped closer, water brushing against her legs, and the creek seemed to pulse in response, as if alive. "It is a species, once bound to your stars, now wandering. My presence here is not by chance." The words were not spoken aloud, yet Jonah understood them perfectly. He felt a mixture of disbelief and awe. A species bound to the stars, wandering. How could any human comprehend such a concept? And yet, he felt no fear, only a curious fascination. "Why here?" he asked, voice trembling slightly. "Why now?" She regarded him with eyes that glimmered like liquid jewels, reflecting both the moon and the depth of some ancient memory. "This place, it is connected. Your home, your world, the energies that flow through it resonate with my kind. I am drawn here, as are others. The forest is a threshold." Jonah felt the weight of her words. A threshold. His pulse quickened. He glanced around, trying to sense any hidden threat, but the forest seemed to watch, alive and silent. "Others?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Yes," she replied, her tone calm but urgent. "Not all are friendly. Some seek balance, others seek dominance. I am here to observe, and to guide if possible." Jonah swallowed, realizing the danger had not yet passed. Guide me?" Her face softened, a rare warmth in her expression, though still alien, still otherworldly. "You have seen. You understand more than many. You can help keep the balance." The words sent shivers down his spine. Him? A human, ordinary in every way, or so he had thought, being asked to help maintain some cosmic balance? Yet the conviction in her presence left no room for doubt. Jonah tried to speak, but no words came. Instead, he simply nodded, an instinctive acceptance of something far larger than himself. She extended her hand. The water rippled as if responding to her invitation, and Jonah felt compelled to reach for it. The instant their fingers touched, a wave of sensation washed over him. Memories, visions, and emotions not his own flooded his mind. He saw distant stars swirling nebulae, civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humanity existed. He felt joy, loss, hope, and fear, all intertwined in patterns he could not fully comprehend. When he pulled his hand back, he staggered, gripping the edge of the creek to steady himself. I saw so much," he whispered. Her expression conveyed understanding. "Yes. The bond shows you what is necessary. You are ready to begin." Jonah's knees buckled, but she steadied him with a gentle touch. The creek seemed to hum under their feet, a soft resonance that felt like a heartbeat. "Ready for what?" he asked, the tremor in his voice betraying both fear and exhilaration. "To learn. To protect. To understand. You have glimpsed what is hidden. Now you must walk the path." She moved slightly upstream, and Jonah followed, unsure where they were going but compelled by an irresistible force. The forest shifted subtly around them. Shadows stretched and contracted unnaturally, and the trees themselves seemed to guide their path. Jonah realized the world he had known, his home, his familiar creek, was no longer simply what he remembered. Layers existed beneath the surface, layers that only she could perceive and reveal. "What is this place?" he asked, all creeping into his voice. "A nexus," she replied. "A point where realities intersect, where worlds, species, and energies converge. Not all may see it, but it is here, always shaping what unfolds." Jonah's mind spun. A nexus? The concept defied everything he had learned about physics, about nature, about the world. Yet he felt it with every fiber of his being, the weight, the vibration, the pulse of something greater. As they moved deeper, the alien began to hum softly, a melody that resonated with the air itself. Flowers along the creek leaned subtly toward her, leaves shivered, and the water glimmered with an ethereal light. Jonah realized he was not merely observing, he was participating. His presence, his thoughts, even his fear, influenced the world around him. A sudden movement in the shadows snapped him to attention. Another creature emerged, more massive than the last, but different. Its form was jagged, angular, and dark, like fractured glass. Its eyes glowed with a red intensity that made Jonah's stomach knot. The alien stepped in front of him, her posture protective yet calm. "It senses you, human. It questions your worth." Jonah felt a cold dread wash over him. The creature's gaze was penetrating, assessing, as though it could peer into his soul. He felt exposed, vulnerable, utterly insignificant. The alien raised a hand, and the air vibrated with power, a subtle shimmer creating a barrier between Jonah and the creature. The being snarled, a sound that resonated in Jonah's chest, but it did not advance. The alien's face changed again, her expression subtle but commanding. "It tests me, you. Stay calm. Trust the bond." Jonah forced himself to breathe, to steady his racing heart. He focused on the ripple of connection he had felt before, the warmth, the subtle resonance that linked him to her. Slowly, the creature tilted its head, sensing the shift in energy, and backed into the shadows. Jonah exhaled shakily, trembling with relief and exhilaration. The alien watched him for a moment, then turned, her gaze moving forward. "There is much to learn. Time is short, and the balance fragile. You must understand quickly." Jonah nodded, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He had glimpsed the extraordinary, faced incomprehensible forces, and survived, but he knew the night had only just begun. The forest seemed to pulse with hidden life as they continued along the creek, a world layered within a world, waiting to be revealed. Every step Jonah took was both terrifying and exhilarating. He felt his humanity, but also something more, a latent potential, awakened by proximity to her and the nexus she protected. He realized that his life, his understanding of reality, would never be the same. The alien paused at a bend in the creek. Water cascaded over a small ledge, glowing faintly under her influence. She gestured for him to look closer. As Jonah approached, he saw shapes in the water, reflections not of him, not of her, but of other beings. Some were humanoid, others completely alien, shifting forms, fragmented and beautiful. All connected, she communicated. Past, present, and potential. You can see what others cannot. Jonah's head spun. Each reflection seemed to tell a story, civilizations rising and falling, alliances formed and broken, conflicts resolved and ignited. He saw echoes of his own world, choices that could change everything, moments that mattered far more than he had ever realized. "Why me?" he whispered, voice barely audible. "Because you chose to see. Because your mind is open. Others would run, hide, or ignore. You are willing." Jonah's chest swelled with a mixture of pride and fear. He felt unworthy, yet compelled, drawn into a role he could not fully understand. The alien's gaze softened, and she placed her hand lightly on his shoulder. Come, there is one more you must meet, one who holds knowledge crucial to your journey. Jonah hesitated, then followed, knowing instinctively that the path ahead would demand courage, understanding, and perhaps sacrifice. The forest stretched endlessly, shadows deepening, the creek winding like a silver thread. He realized the night was far from over. The alien led him into the heart of the Nexus, where unseen forces danced, energies collided, and the true nature of the universe began to reveal itself. And in that moment, Jonah understood that he had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. He was no longer merely human in the ordinary sense. He was now part of something greater, an unfolding story that would test him, teach him, and change the fate of everything he thought he knew. And as the first tendrils of a new dawn touched the treetops, Jonah's journey deep into the extraordinary had only just begun. Jonah stepped deeper into the heart of the Nexus, the alien beside him moving with a grace that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. The forest had transformed, no longer just a familiar creek behind his home. It had become a labyrinth of shifting light, whispering shadows, and floating threads of energy that pulsed with life. Every step Jonah took resonated with a low hum in his chest, a vibration that seemed to echo from the core of the universe itself. His mind raced, still trying to process everything he had seen. The alien's beauty, the glimpses of other worlds, the sheer scale of what lay hidden behind ordinary reality. But now, more than fear or awe, he felt a sense of destiny, a calling that he could not ignore. Ahead, the alien paused. She turned her head toward him, eyes gleaming like molten starlight. "This is the one you must meet," she communicated, the thought flowing directly into Jonah's mind. "The Keeper." Jonah's heart skipped. "The Keeper?" he thought, the word unfamiliar, but filled with weight. The alien gestured toward a clearing, where the air shimmered like heat over desert sands, forming a translucent dome of energy. Inside, a figure waited. Jonah stepped closer, drawn by a mixture of fear and fascination. The being inside the dome was unlike anything Jonah had imagined. It radiated power, but it was not menacing. Its form shifted constantly, sometimes humanoid, sometimes elongated and ethereal, sometimes fractal and incomprehensible, but its presence conveyed intelligence, patience, and authority. Jonah realized he was looking at something far older than humanity, older than the stars he had glimpsed in visions earlier. The Keeper's voice reached him, not through sound, but as a direct resonance in his consciousness. "Welcome, Jonah. I have been expecting you." The word sent a chill down his spine. Somehow the Keeper knew his name. Somehow it knew him. "I have seen your courage, your curiosity, your willingness to see beyond the veil. But seeing is not enough. To protect, to guide, to maintain balance, you must act." Jonah swallowed hard. Act? How? He thought, unsure if he was even capable of the tasks implied. The Nexus is fragile. Energies that flow through your world and countless others are in flux. Malignant forces seek to manipulate them. They will try to use your world as a foothold. You must prevent it. The alien stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You are not alone, Jonah. I will guide you. But the choice, the action, it must come from you." Jonah's mind spun. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but alongside it was a strange clarity. This was no longer about curiosity, no longer about fear. It was about purpose. He nodded, a silent agreement, a commitment that transcended language or thought. The Keeper pulsed with light, sending waves through the clearing that revealed glimpses of distant galaxies, each flickering like a memory. Jonah understood. These were the threads of existence, the delicate balance that connected everything. And now he had a role in protecting it. "The threat approaches," the Keeper warned. Jonah turned toward the forest, and the air grew heavy with a dark presence. Shapes emerged from the shadows, creatures warped and jagged, their eyes glowing red and malevolent. They had sensed him, sensed the bond, and moved with purpose like predators stalking prey. Jonah felt fear spike, but it was tempered by the alien's calm presence. She reached out, intertwining her essence with his. "Trust yourself. Trust the bond." Jonah took a deep breath, focusing on the resonance he had felt earlier. The energy of the Nexus, the connection to her, to the Keeper, to the forest itself. As the creatures advanced, the ground beneath them seemed to react, rising in waves of energy that repelled the intruders. Jonah raised his hands instinctively, and to his astonishment, light flowed from him, not from the alien, but from his own being. The creatures recoiled, snarling, clawing at the barrier of energy he now commanded. His heart pounded, but with each pulse the power grew, fueled by his will, by his belief, by his connection to the alien and the Nexus. He realized then that he was not ordinary, never had been. The bond had awakened something latent within him, a potential for greatness, for guardianship. The alien joined him, her hands tracing patterns in the air, amplifying the energy, guiding it, shaping it into shields, barriers, and pulses that drove the creatures back. Jonah felt exhilaration, a rush of power that made every fear, every doubt, every hesitation vanish. "We are one," the alien communicated. "Focus. Direct your will." And he did. With a thought, a gesture, a surge of pure intent, the creatures were thrown back, shattered like glass into fragments of darkness that dissipated into the night. The Nexus pulsed in response, stabilizing, realigning, glowing brighter than ever. Jonah stumbled back, breathless, but alive, triumphant. The alien smiled, her expression soft, but filled with pride. "You have done it," she said, the thought echoing warmly. "You have protected the balance, defended the Nexus." Jonah felt a mixture of relief and awe. I did it," he whispered aloud, disbelief in his own voice. "You did," the Keeper confirmed. "But remember, this is only the beginning. The universe is vast, filled with mysteries, challenges, and threats. You are now a guardian, Jonah. The choice to act, to protect, to learn, that is yours always." Jonah looked around at the forest, at the creek, at the alien standing beside him. Everything seemed more vivid, more alive, more miraculous than before. The creatures that had threatened them were gone, but the memory of their danger lingered, a reminder that vigilance, courage, and understanding were eternal responsibilities. The alien extended her hand. "Come," she thought, "there is a place you must see, a home for those who protect, for those who learn, for those who will carry the future." Jonah took her hand, and the world shifted around them. The creek, the forest, the Nexus, they all blended, flowing into a radiant landscape of light and energy, a sanctuary hidden from ordinary eyes, a place where knowledge and power intertwined. He realized he was no longer the same man who had first stumbled upon a strange figure bathing in the creek. He was something more, part guardian, part student, part explorer of the infinite. And yet, in that moment, he felt complete, ready, connected. The alien's face, the one that had changed everything from the start, shone with a brilliance that spoke of hope, trust, and infinite possibility. She leaned slightly toward him, and for the first time, Jonah felt the stirrings of understanding, not just of the universe, but of himself. "We will face what comes," she communicated, "and together we will endure." Jonah nodded, a smile breaking across his face. The night sky above shimmered with stars, galaxies twinkling like jewels, the universe vast and alive. And in the quiet, resonant heart of the Nexus, he felt the pulse of destiny itself. He was ready, and as the first rays of dawn kissed the treetops, Jonah understood that he had not only witnessed the extraordinary, he had become a part of it. A legend in the making, a guardian of balance, a witness to wonders that would forever remain beyond the reach of ordinary human understanding. And in that moment, the story of a human who dared to see, to trust, and to act began to echo across the cosmos, a tale of courage, transformation, and the indomitable power of choice.